Love a good plate of veggies.
Especially in a city like Dhaka, where the culinary scene is so vibrant and diverse.
Exactly. But have you ever thought about how those vegetables actually get from the farm to your plate in a megacity like Dhaka?
It's a fascinating journey, to say the least.
Yeah, it's more complicated than it seems at first glance, isn't it? So we've done a deep dive into a whole bunch of research, reports, analyses to really try and understand how this whole system works.
And it is quite a system.
Definitely. So ready to dig in and uncover the hidden world of Dhaka's vegetable supply chain.
Absolutely, let's go.
Okay, so first things first. What's the basic structure of this system? Where do we even begin?
Well, the analysis shows that it's a multi-layered system, right? Starting from farms, mostly located outside Dhaka, and going all the way to consumers like you and me.
Makes sense. But I bet there's a whole lot happening in between.
Oh, definitely. And one of the things that jumped out at me was the significant informality in the transactions. It's not all neat and organized.
So what does that actually look like on the ground?
So traditionally, it goes something like this. Farmers sell their produce to small traders called faria.
Farias, okay.
Then these farias sell to larger traders called beparis.
Got it. So it's like stepping stones.
Yeah, exactly. And then the beparis transport the vegetables to the wholesale markets where they deal with aradars, who are essentially commission agents. And from there, you have pakers, wholesalers, who then supply to the retailers. And finally, the retailers sell to us, the consumers.
Wow, that's a lot of steps. No wonder it's complex.
It is. And remember, each step adds a little something to the price, right? Because each person needs their cut.
Right, makes sense. But is everyone happy with this system? I mean, it seems like it could be simplified.
Well, there are newer initiatives emerging, like the Chowdhull Vegetable Network. They're trying to connect farmers directly to retailers, cutting out some of those middlemen.
That sounds interesting. We'll have to dig into that a bit later. But first, let's break down each player in this traditional system a little more. What are the challenges faced by the farmers at the very beginning of this chain?
Well, they often deal with low prices for their produce. They also have limited access to storage facilities.
So if they can't store their produce, what happens?
Well, it leads to spoilage. A lot of it goes to waste. Plus, they often lacked proper transportation to get their vegetables to the markets efficiently.
So they're kind of stuck, huh?
In a way, yeah. Then you have the intermediaries, the farias, beparis, aradars, pakers. They all play a role in aggregation, transportation, and wholesale transactions.
But you have to wonder, do we really need all those layers?
That's the question, isn't it? The analysis highlights this tension between their perceived value and the profits they take. Are they really providing essential services, or are they just adding to the cost?
Yeah, food for thought. Okay, so let's talk about the wholesale markets. We touched on Karwan Bazaar before. What's the deal with that place?
It's a huge market in Dhaka. Actually, it's one of the largest wholesale markets in Bangladesh. It's a central hub for vegetables coming in from all over.
And it's only wholesale?
Well, it's primarily wholesale, but it also has a retail section, so you'll find everything there from bulk buyers to everyday shoppers.
Wow, that's pretty unique. And are the other wholesale markets like Karwan Bazaar?
Oh yeah, there are several others. Jatrbari, Shambazar, they all play a crucial role in the distribution network.
Okay, so from these massive wholesale centers, the vegetables then make their way to all those retail markets we see across the city. And we've got a whole variety of those, right?
Absolutely. You have your larger, more organized markets like Hachirpool or Mohammed Burkrishi Market. Then you have countless smaller neighborhood markets, and of course the informal markets.
The informal markets.
Yeah, the street vendors, the little shops that pop up everywhere, they're a big part of the system too. And you've even got online platforms now trying to get in on the action.
Like online grocery shopping.
Exactly. But the challenge is all these markets aren't evenly distributed across Dhaka. Some areas have much better access than others.
Right, I can see how that would be a problem. Okay, so we've got the vegetables moving from farms to farias to beparis to wholesale markets to retailers and finally to consumers. But how are they physically transported?
It's a mix of everything. Trucks bring in the bulk from outside Dhaka, then you've got rickshaw vans carrying smaller loads to different parts of the city. And of course, a lot of it is still moved by hand, especially in the smaller markets.
I can imagine that comes with its own set of challenges.
Oh, definitely. Traffic is a nightmare in Dhaka, and road conditions can be really bad. This leads to delays, damage to the produce, and ultimately higher costs.
And probably more waste, right?
Exactly. All this handling and transportation contributes to those post-harvest losses we talked about. Some estimates put it as high as 20 to 40% of the produce.
That's a lot of wasted food.
It is, and that waste ultimately impacts prices too. Speaking of prices, let's dive into that a bit more. What are some of the key factors that influence the price of vegetables in Dhaka?
Yeah, I've always wondered about that. It seems like prices can fluctuate wildly.
Well, it starts at the farm level, right? Farmers often have very little bargaining power when selling to the furias. They're often at the mercy of whatever price they're offered.
So they're already starting at a disadvantage.
Yeah, pretty much. Then by the time the vegetables reach the wholesale markets, the prices are affected by all sorts of things. supply and demand, transportation costs, and of course those markups by each intermediary along the way.
So those extra layers really add up.
They do, and then the retailers have to factor in their own costs like rent, labor, and their desired profit margins. All of this gets passed on to the consumer.
I see. So it's like a chain reaction.
Exactly. And seasonality is another huge factor. Prices tend to be higher during the off season when certain vegetables are less readily available.
Right, that makes sense. But what about things like, are there any market manipulations happening? Or lack of information?
Well, some sources point to the possible existence of market syndicates that might be manipulating prices.
So groups that control the supply.
Something like that, yeah. And there's definitely a lack of transparent market information available to farmers. They often don't know the actual market prices, which weakens their bargaining position even further.
So they're basically in the dark.
To some extent, yes. And this can lead to really big price differences between what the farmer gets paid and what the consumer ultimately pays. One of the sources gave the example of cauliflower.
Oh, I love cauliflower.
Right, so a farmer might sell cauliflower for, say, 2 to 5 taka per piece at the farm gate, but by the time it reaches the consumer in Dhaka, it could be selling for 20 to 30 taka.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So if we had to sum up the major challenges and inefficiencies in this system, what would they be?
I think the transportation issues are a big one. The poor infrastructure, high costs, and frequent delays all contribute to spoilage and price increases. Then there's the lack of proper storage facilities, both at the farm level and in the markets.
Right, we touched on that earlier. And we can't forget those post-harvest losses.
Absolutely. Reducing those losses would have a significant impact on both availability and affordability. And then, of course, there's the issue of the middlemen. Are there too many? Do their markups need to be controlled?
It's a tough question. I mean, they do play a role in the system, but it seems like there could be more efficient ways to manage that.
Definitely. And we can't overlook the lack of market information for farmers. That's a key factor contributing to their low bargaining power. And then there are the concerns about quality and safety. Some markets lack proper hygiene and sanitation, which can impact the safety of the food.
That's a big deal. Okay, so we've really unpacked a lot here. We've got the complex structure of the system, the various stakeholders, the types of markets, the challenges of transportation and storage, the pricing mechanisms, the role of intermediaries, and the impact of all of this on both farmers and consumers. It's a pretty intricate web.
It really is, and it's fascinating to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that gap between what farmers are getting paid and what consumers are paying. That's a huge disparity, and it highlights the inefficiencies within the system.
It definitely does, and it raises some important questions about fairness and sustainability. So considering all these layers, all these challenges, and all this information, what do you think? What one improvement could have the biggest impact on getting fresh, affordable vegetables to the people of Dhaka? And, how might this apply to other rapidly growing cities facing similar challenges?
That's a great question, and one we'll have to ponder on for a bit.